Welcome back. In this module, we will discuss what is the company's legal type. To understand company's legal type, we will review and discuss three key ideas. 1. What is a company? 2. Why different types of companies? And lastly, what are examples of legal types? An understanding of what is a company helps in identifying the business rules of setting up a company. So, why bother understanding what is a company? Because we need a level of understanding to assist us in defining the processes, documents required, and steps involved. Additionally, understanding the logic and reasons for the existence of different types of companies would empower us to execute various types of companies we encounter with the required level of intelligence instead of copy-pasting from other jurisdictions without real understanding. The approach we will take is to compare a company to an individual. We will examine a simple structure to help us to ask the important question, why different legal types? Once this is completed, we will then look at what different types of companies are in our practical life today. What is a company? Simply, a company is a legal entity. We can think of it as an artificial person. It has legal rights and legal responsibilities. It means it can sue and be sued. It can be a party to a contract similar to an individual. To understand this further, we can compare a company to an individual. Comparing a company to an individual. An individual would have a birth certificate. Within this certificate, there are certain contents depicting key information such as place of birth, name of a person, possibly residency, and parents' details. As we have discussed previously, an individual is responsible for their own liability, and he has her own rights. Now let's examine the company. A company has a certificate of formation similar to the birth certificate of an individual. The place of birth of a company is the jurisdiction of where it was created. Obviously, the name will stay the name of the company and residency will be the business address of the company. The key stakeholders would include shareholders, directors, and managers. Equally, a company has liabilities. It can sue and be sued. It means it has rights and responsibilities similar to an individual. By conducting this simple comparison, we see that historically the purpose of creating a company was to replace an individual within a legal frame. Why different legal types? As we discussed earlier, a company as an invention was created to replace an individual in a legal frame. Hence then every other structure came to solve a prevalent challenge. One of the challenges was an individual was completely liable. To limit this liability, the LLC was created where a limited liability company solved that problem by a structure, which is self-explanatory, as a limited liability company. Next, there was another challenge. The challenge of allowing multiple individuals to participate in a company that is traded publicly. Hence, companies that are traded on the stock exchange cannot have the structure of a limited liability company. Thus, a corporation, or as we know it in the UAE, as a public joint stock company, was created to allow the public to buy shares of the corporation. Another challenge that presented itself was creating a structure to allow for investment where a license and activities would not be required because the sole purpose of the company is to invest in other companies. The solution was to have an investment company. These can be offshore, holding, or a family business company. Can you think of a challenge or a problem that needs to be solved with a new structure of a company? This may become a new structure that we can create within the free zone. As you can see, these are logical and simple principles that we can apply to manage new requirements whenever we recognize the need. Let's examine a simple company structure. The simplest company structure will consist of one individual, but in this case, we will take two individuals to create our simple structure. It is imperative that we start with having a shareholder agreement between us as two individuals. Within the shareholder agreement, we should define the objective of the company or the purpose of its existence, the capital to invest, and the role of the shareholders, directors, and managers. We then must procure a physical business address and decide on the business activities. This structure would be a limited liability company, meaning we are liable to the limit of the company capital. We are permitted to practice the activities prescribed on the license from the business address. Now, let's consider different legal types or company structures. There are a multitude of company structures that exist today. Some of these are sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is a company owned by one individual under the name, in most cases, of the individual and as part of that individual. It means the person is personally liable of the company and has the rights of the individual extended to the company. Limited liability company. The limited liability company, self-explanatory, is a company with its liability limited to the company capital. Think of what kind of structure required for limited liability partnership, foundation, trust. To conclude this module, let's look at the output of the company setup. Once a company is set up, they are a set of documents issued to the stakeholders of the company. These are Memorandum of Association, usually known as MOA. The MOA is a shareholder agreement that we discussed earlier. Certificate of Formation. A certificate of formation is akin to a birth certificate of the company. Share register. A share register is a register of all the shareholders within the company depicting the number of shares for each shareholder. Lease agreement. A lease agreement is an agreement of a physical address of the company. Business license. A business license is a permit issued to allow the company to practice a set of activities as depicted on the license. To conclude this module, let's review what we've discussed. We defined a company as a legal entity. This legal entity would have a structure known as a legal type. An example of legal type would be an LLC. We also reviewed what an investor would receive at the end of the company setup process. These are MOA, Memorandum of Association, also known as a shareholder agreement, Certificate of Formation, Share Register, Lease Agreement, and Business License. If you are new to these materials, please feel free to review them multiple times and continue with other modules to develop the foundation of understanding of free zone and company setup topics.